When a woman realizes that you've stopped contacting her, the very first thing that hits her, before logic, before pride, before even anger, is a wave of emotional confusion. It's not just the silence that unsettles her. It's what the silence represents. You see, communication is oxygen to most women in a relationship. It's how they read affection, gauge interest, and feel connected. So when that flow of contact suddenly cuts off, it sends a ripple through her world. Her mind starts racing, trying to figure out what shifted. Did I say something wrong? Is he okay? Is he done with me? The questions come quickly, unfiltered, and emotional. In those early moments, her emotions take the wheel. There's a mixture of worry and irritation. A part of her might feel genuinely concerned, especially if the relationship had depth. She wonders if you're going through something. She may even want to reach out. But another part of her starts to feel the sting of your absence, and that pain often turns to confusion and frustration. Women are intuitive. They can sense when something isn't right, and silence speaks volumes. It's not just that you're not calling or texting. It's what that action or lack of it suggests. It suggests that something has changed, and that message hits harder than words ever could. Now, depending on the kind of woman she is and how invested she was, that emotional reaction can show up in different ways. Some women may lash out, sending a message to test the waters. Oh, so now you don't know how to use your phone. Others might go completely quiet themselves, telling themselves they won't chase someone who's gone cold. But no matter how it shows up on the outside, the inside is often spinning. Because this isn't just about your silence. It's about the shift in the rhythm she had gotten used to. The rhythm where you were present, checking in, showing that you cared. It's important to understand that women often thrive on emotional security. Consistent communication makes her feel safe, seen, and valued. When you break that pattern, it disrupts that sense of safety. Even if she was beginning to take your presence for granted, your silence forces her to notice your absence. That's powerful, because absence, when used correctly, is louder than presence. This is when the deeper emotional reaction kicks in, the part where she starts reflecting. That silence you created, it gives her space to feel the void. She starts remembering the last conversation, the last date, the last time you made her laugh or feel special. And then, slowly, she starts asking herself questions she hadn't thought of in a while. Was I too distant? Was I treating him right? Did I value him enough? And these questions don't always come from a place of regret. They come from realization. Realization that maybe she overlooked what you were giving because she assumed it would always be there. That's the gift of silence. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it. In that moment, you're no longer just a guy she talked to. You become a mirror. A mirror she must look into to face her role in the connection. Whether or not she likes what she sees will determine everything that happens next. But in that very first stage, when the silence is fresh and unexplained, it's that emotional confusion, so raw, so personal, that sets the tone for what follows. It shakes her even if just a little. Because when a man who once made an effort suddenly goes quiet, a woman begins to realize something that cuts deeper than words. She was never in control of his presence, only her response to it. And in that quiet moment, the power of your absence becomes louder than any message you could have sent. Something very interesting happens when a man decides to stop reaching out, when he steps back and goes quiet. It's more than just a missed phone call or an unread message. It's a shift, a quiet, powerful shift in the emotional dynamic between two people. At first, she may not recognize it for what it is, especially if she's used to being the one pursued. But gradually, something clicks. She feels it. The energy has changed. The weight has shifted. The power dynamic has begun to tilt. You see, in many relationships, whether we admit it or not, there's an unspoken rhythm. Sometimes it's the man chasing, always initiating, always checking in. Sometimes it's a balanced dance. But often, one person sets the pace and the other adjusts. When a man is constantly available, always texting first, always making the plans, he unknowingly gives away a certain type of power. The power of uncertainty, the power of mystery, the power of being missed. But when that changes, when the calls stop, when the texts no longer come in like clockwork, it forces a rebalancing. Now she's not just wondering where you went. She's wondering where the attention went. The validation, the presence, and more importantly, why it's suddenly gone. And in that wondering, she begins to realize something she may have never consciously thought about. Your presence had value. Your attention had weight. You being in her life added something real. And now your absence is echoing in ways she didn't expect. This is where the shift in power becomes real. Because now you're not the one waiting for a reply. You're not sitting by the phone wondering if she'll ever call. She is. And it's not about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about reclaiming a balance that may have been lost. When you pull back, when you stop giving all of yourself so freely, she has no choice but to reconsider the role she's played in the connection. Has she matched your energy? Has she reciprocated your effort? Or has she gotten comfortable, assuming you'd always be the one reaching out? This shift is also deeply tied to respect. When you stop contacting her, you're essentially sending a silent but clear message. I value myself enough to walk away from anything that feels one-sided. That energy is magnetic. It doesn't push her away. It draws her in, not out of fear or guilt, but out of a renewed curiosity. She starts to look at you differently, not as someone who needs her, but as someone she might be in danger of losing. And that's where the dynamic really changes. What often surprises women in this moment is how different you seem. You haven't done anything flashy. You haven't made a scene. You've simply stopped feeding the connection with constant effort. And that, in itself, redefines who you are in her eyes. You're no longer the man she can half prioritize while keeping him on standby. You're the man who knows his worth enough to go silent when his energy is not being met with the same. This shift doesn't always lead to a dramatic chase. Sometimes it leads to reflection. Sometimes it leads to her stepping up. Other times, it reveals that she was never as invested as you were. Either way, the clarity it brings is invaluable. When a man stops reaching out, it's not just the silence she notices. It's the strength behind it. And in that moment, the entire story between you begins to rewrite itself, not through words, but through the powerful decision to reclaim your presence. There comes a moment, after the initial confusion and the subtle shift in power, when everything becomes quiet, not just on your end, but within her mind too. And it's in that silence, in that space you've created by stepping back, that something profound begins to happen. She starts to reflect, not just on you, not just on your absence, but on herself. On the relationship, on everything that led to this silence. This is the moment of triggered reflection, and it's more powerful than most people realize. When you were present and always initiating, her mind may have been busy reacting, replying, managing expectations, assuming there would always be another message, another call, another effort from you. But when that stops, the noise fades. There's no more stimulus to respond to, and what's left is the silence that invites self-examination. It often starts subtly. She'll think back to the last time you spoke. The last message, the last date. She might replay conversations in her mind, wondering if she missed a sign, if there was something you said or something she ignored. And suddenly, every small detail becomes significant. That quiet moment when you looked disappointed. That day you didn't seem fully yourself. That time she left your message on read a little too long. In this stage, she's not just noticing your absence. She's reviewing her role in how things unfolded. This kind of reflection is different from regret. It's deeper than that. It's about recognition of the energy you brought, the stability, the effort, the things you did that she may not have acknowledged in the moment because they seemed so consistent, so dependable. But now, in the quiet, those things stand out like bright lights in hindsight. And it hits differently when she realizes you weren't doing all that because you had to. You did it because you chose to, and now you've chosen not to. This is when she might ask herself questions she's never dared to before. Was I really present in that relationship? Did I take his presence for granted? Did I only appreciate him when he was right in front of me? These questions don't come from guilt. They come from growth. Because for the first time, she's not just seeing you as someone who disappeared. She's seeing the value of what was there before the silence. The beautiful thing about this reflection is that it isn't something you have to demand. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to give an ultimatum. The space you've created does all the work for you. In that space, she begins to grow more aware of what she brought, or didn't bring, to the connection. Sometimes, that reflection leads her back to you, more grounded and more ready to reciprocate. Other times, it helps her walk away with the understanding that she wasn't truly ready to receive the kind of presence you offered. Either way, it leads to truth. What matters most is that your silence becomes a mirror, not a punishment. It allows her to look at herself without distraction, without excuses. And if she has the emotional maturity to face what she sees, then that reflection can spark a transformation, not just in how she sees you, but in how she values relationships moving forward. So never underestimate the power of stepping back, because sometimes it's your absence that finally gives her the clarity to see everything you were trying to show her when you were present. At some point, after the confusion, after the shift in energy, and after all the reflection, there comes a test. And it's not one you set deliberately, but it happens all the same. When you stop contacting her, when you go silent, it becomes a quiet but undeniable test of her genuine interest. Because here's the truth, when someone truly cares, they won't just let you fade away without a word. They might hesitate, they might wrestle with pride, but eventually, genuine feelings always find a way to show up. This stage reveals everything. It shows whether the connection was real or just convenient, whether it was rooted in mutual value or just one-sided effort disguised as something more. When a woman has genuine interest, your silence won't sit comfortably with her. It'll press on her heart. She might try to brush it off at first. He's probably busy, or maybe he just needs space. But when the silence lingers, it becomes something she can't ignore. And if she cares, she will respond. That response may not be loud. It may not even come quickly, but it will come. It might be a message that seems casual on the surface, something like, "Hey, just checking in," or "Haven't heard from you in a while." Don't be fooled by the simplicity of those words. They often carry far more weight than what's being said. That message is her way of reaching out through uncertainty. It's her saying, "I noticed you're not here, and I care enough to say something about it." But if there's no response, if your silence is met with more silence, then you've learned something just as valuable. You've learned that maybe her interest wasn't as deep as you thought. And that's not a loss. That's clarity. Because the worst place to be is investing in someone who was never truly invested in you. Your silence becomes a filter. It removes the noise and shows you what's real. The beauty of this test is that it requires no strategy, no manipulation. You're not playing hard to get. You're simply stepping back to see if the energy you were pouring in will ever be returned. And that's fair. Relationships should never be powered by one person alone. There needs to be movement on both sides. Effort, interest, presence. So when you go quiet and she does nothing, that silence isn't rejection. It's revelation. Now, some women won't reach out even if they feel something, and that's okay too. Pride, fear of vulnerability, or even past hurt can get in the way. But if someone can't overcome those walls to check on you, to fight for the connection, even a little, then you still have your answer. Interest without action is just intention, and intention alone doesn't build anything lasting. This is where your self-worth really shows, because when you step back and wait, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself, you give her the space to choose, and her choice says everything. Either she'll step forward and match the energy you once gave, or she'll stay still and let you go. But no matter which way it goes, you win, because you finally see the truth. In the end, silence may feel like a gamble, but it's not. It's an honest question, and her reaction is the answer you've been needing all along. There's a moment in every emotional journey where something shifts, not between two people, but within the individual herself. After the confusion fades, after the power dynamic flips, after she's done reflecting and quietly testing the waters to see if you'll come back or if she should reach out, there comes a point where self-preservation takes over. And when it does, the energy changes yet again. See, as human beings, we're wired to protect what's most vulnerable. Our hearts, our minds, our emotional peace. So when a woman has sat with your silence long enough and the uncertainty lingers with no sign of clarity, she begins to pivot. Not always out of strength at first, but out of necessity. It's a way of coping, a way of regaining balance when the emotional ground feels unstable. She might still care, she might still wonder, but she realizes that sitting in limbo is not a place she can stay. At first, it starts small. She distracts herself, buries herself in work, maybe goes out more often, surrounds herself with people who make her feel wanted again. This isn't always about moving on to someone new. It's about moving back into herself, rebuilding the parts that felt exposed by your absence. Self-preservation is quiet but powerful. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic declarations. It's the subtle change in her tone, the less frequent thoughts of you, the shift in energy when your name comes up in conversation. Where once there was hope or frustration, now there's detachment, not coldness, just calm, because she's come to terms with what your silence means, and instead of fighting it, she begins to adapt to it. Sometimes, this part of the journey can feel like a wall going up. And for a man who was hoping she might come running back or begging for answers, this can be confusing. But what's really happening is that she's choosing peace. Not because she doesn't feel anything anymore, but because she's decided that she matters too. And if your silence didn't come with explanation, with care, or with any sign of mutual effort, she's not going to keep opening herself to uncertainty. And let me be clear, this doesn't mean she's stopped loving you or that she never did. Love doesn't always disappear just because someone chooses themselves. But love without safety, without reciprocity, without presence becomes too heavy to carry alone. So she lays it down. She might still hope quietly that one day you'll show up with clarity. But until then, she's not waiting. She's not stuck. What's powerful about this stage is that it transforms her. It brings her back to her core, often stronger and more aware than she was before. If she once relied on your messages to feel seen, now she's finding new ways to validate herself. If she used to check her phone, constantly hoping for your name to pop up, now she's focused on things that feed her growth. That silence you left behind, it taught her how to listen to her own voice again. And so, if you ever come back, you may not find the same woman who waited in confusion. You may meet someone who has learned how to love herself louder than your absence ever could. Because in the end, the greatest act of strength isn't in holding on. It's in knowing when to let go for the sake of your own peace. Eventually, after all the silence, all the shifts, the reflection, the tests, and the quiet acts of self-preservation, something inevitable happens. There's a final outcome, and this outcome will fall into one of two places: closure or a comeback. Let's talk about closure first. When enough time has passed and no effort has been made, when a woman has done the work to understand the silence, to reflect on the dynamic, to rebuild her self-worth and emotional balance, sometimes she simply moves on. Not bitterly, not loudly, just with a kind of peace that only comes from letting go of what no longer serves her. She may still think about you from time to time. She might even smile at the memories or occasionally wonder what could have been. But the emotional hold, it's gone. Because silence, when stretched too long without clarity or care, has a way of closing doors all by itself. And by the time you think of reaching out again, if you ever do, she's not where you left her. She's grown past that version of herself, the one who waited, the one who questioned her worth, the one who wondered why you disappeared. But here's the other possibility, the comeback. And this doesn't always happen the way people imagine it. It's not always about one person showing up with flowers and apologies. Sometimes it begins quietly, just like the silence did, a message, a genuine check-in, a sign that you've been thinking, that you've realized something. That maybe the space created more understanding than distance. If she's still in a place where her heart is open, if she still sees potential, she may allow that door to crack open again. But don't mistake her openness for desperation. She's not the same woman you went silent on. She's more aware now, more grounded. She knows what she brings to the table and what she won't accept anymore. If there is to be a comeback, it must be mutual, it must be intentional, and it must be different from what it was before. Because nothing grows in the same soil if you don't learn how to water it right this time. Sometimes the silence helps both people grow in ways they couldn't while they were together. Time apart brings perspective, and that distance can actually deepen love rather than destroy it. But only if both people come back with clearer minds, fuller hearts, and a new commitment to doing things better. A comeback is not about returning to the past. It's about creating something new from the lessons the silence taught you both. Whether it ends in closure or a comeback, the outcome is always a teacher. If it's closure, it teaches you peace. It reminds you that not everything unfinished needs to be completed, and not all emotional investments need a return to be valid. Sometimes the growth you gained in the process is the reward. And if it's a comeback, it teaches you what real connection looks like, how silence can actually deepen appreciation, and how space can reset a rhythm that was once out of tune. So when a woman reacts to your silence, when she reflects, when she steps back, when she chooses herself, what she's really doing is preparing for one of those two outcomes. She's either letting you go with grace or setting the foundation for a love that's been refined by time, space, and truth. Either way, the silence will speak, and what it reveals will always be real. So, when you stop contacting a woman, it sets off a chain reaction far deeper than most people realize. It starts with an emotional jolt, a moment of confusion, maybe even panic, as she tries to make sense of your silence. Then the power shifts. The one who used to chase becomes the one being chased, not because of manipulation, but because your absence forces her to recognize your value. Soon after, she begins to reflect on you, on herself, and on everything that passed between you. And in that space of stillness, she's faced with the truth. Did she show up for you the way you showed up for her? From there, a subtle test begins. Will she reach out? Will she step forward now that you've stepped back? If the interest is genuine, you'll know. But if the silence is met with silence, that too is your answer. And then comes the most defining stage, self-preservation. She stops waiting. She reclaims her energy. She builds herself back up, not to spite you, but to save herself. And finally, the silence either leads to closure or a comeback. She either walks away with clarity and peace, or she opens the door to something new, something wiser and more intentional than before. But here's what matters most: whether she returns or not, whether love rekindles or fades, you both come out knowing something more about yourselves. Because in the end, it's not just about what a woman will do when you stop contacting her. It's about what that silence reveals. It reveals what's real. It reveals what's worth fighting for. And most importantly, it reveals who's willing to grow through the quiet and come back not just to be heard, but to truly understand and be understood.